Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Last Pillar. I am so glad you're here. And please, whatever you do not leave this video because today we are going to stop lying to ourselves. The truth is, you're not citizens, you're property. The government isn't your protector, it's an armed gang running a tax farm where you are nothing more than milking cows. Today, we dismantle the machine. We will demonstrate the moral perversion of worshipping the secular religion of the state, and we will prove the management of reality and the logical fallacies used to control your mind. To help us see the cage and the farmers who own you, there is no one better than Etienne de la Boétie II, founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation. He is the author of the groundbreaking works Government, the biggest scam in history exposed, and to see the cage is to live it. Etienne, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Harry, it is great to be with you and your audience. And I've been looking forward to this interview for quite some time, so I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Let's try first with defining what a government is, because people think that this is a mother and it's supposed to protect us and to provide us with services, and everything is basically outsourced to the government. But obviously, the government is completely something else, and I would like for you to define it, the true nature of this beast.
Well, I'll give you kind of two different definitions. The obvious definition is a government is a group that claims a monopoly on violence and the ability to rule and control a certain geographic territory, where they claim that they got that ability either through a coronation. Like in a monarchy, they claim the divine right of kings, that God ordained them. Sometimes it's an election. Sometimes it's a rigged fake election. Sometimes it's a communist takeover. Sometimes it's there's a variety of ways that governments come to power, but once they're in power, they claim this monopoly on violence. They generally disarm the populations. They demand taxes and tribute, and they claim the ability to make rules for everyone else. And if you don't follow the rules, then you get punished. And then the other definition that I would give you about government is it's a completely indoctrinated belief system. And so what I believe, and what the case that I make in the book "Government: The Biggest Scam in History" is that it's best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling populations, and they get away with it because there's an intergenerational organized crime system centered around banking and central banking. And
Mhm.
so in most of the countries that are running government on their populations, there is a bank and a central bank that has the ability to create money out of thin air, even though it's inflationary, even though it's stealing the value out of everybody else's money. They're the main benefactors of government. Government is generally, the shekel or the dollar or the pound or the euro or the yen is almost always a fiat currency. It's by government fiat, by government decree, that people have to accept that currency. And so there is behind the ruling class and behind the mythology about why we have the government, and the government's there to protect you, and it's there to protect life, liberty, and property. You have to use the currency. You have to use the banker's currency. It's the money. It's our ancient enemies, the money changers, and the government.
Yeah.
And so that indoctrinated belief system is generally indoctrinated into the population through mandatory government schools and a control over the information that people in society receive about the legitimacy of government, about the necessity of government, and about the desirability of having a government, even though there's no ironclad law of the universe that says that you have to have a government. There's no ironclad law of the universe that says government's a good idea. And really, it's something that is being imposed on the population. There's generally a social contract that the population didn't sign, a constitution, and that constitution is really a one-sided contract that is forced on the people and then indoctrinated by the mandatory government school system and by the monopoly media and by the algorithmic censorship of social media and things like that. so that people never ever see the other side. And so that's one of the tricks that most governments, especially in the United States, maybe you could share how it's done in Israel, is they're controlling the information that society receives about the legitimacy of government, the desirability of government, and the necessity of government by either denigrating people who do not believe in government and think it's a bad idea and then it makes people poorer and causes disharmony, or they're just hiding the fact that there is movements in almost every country on the planet that says, hey, government's a dumb idea, it doesn't work, it allows a small ruling class to rob and control the population, and we don't really need it. You might throw in, like some, like how you see it work in your country, but those are the two definitions that I would offer.
It's actually exactly the same as it's in the US. We have the same model. We have the Prussian education, which I would like for you to speak about and elaborate, because this is how they are basically brainwashing our children with the money they steal from us. And also we have the controlled media, which is basically pure propaganda. And it's creating some kind of simulacra in which people are completely disconnected from reality, and they have only the stories and narratives that they are pushing. So that's very problematic. But before we go into all that, maybe we can just describe what is the opposite objective truth of reality, which is our self-ownership, and what is property, and how we can behave as voluntary people in a voluntary society, so people can understand that there is an alternative before we demonstrate the management of reality. So
That's a great idea, and just to set the table for that,
Mhm.
I would like to point out that it is 100% impossible and immoral and illogical to have a government at all. It is absolutely impossible to have a legitimate, moral, logical government. And what I mean by that is that if I myself don't have the ability to steal Harry's money, and I myself don't have the ability to make up rules for Harry myself, then I cannot delegate a right that I do not possess myself to a representative or to a government to exercise on my behalf. If I don't have the right to do it, the government can't legitimately acquire the right to do it through delegation, which is what is claimed here in the United States. I'm not sure, how
The
they
same,
they
the
teach
same.
yes, the exact same. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, no one can be bound by a social contract they didn't sign. And so if you didn't sign the US Constitution or the Israeli Constitution or the Constitution of the European Union or, whatever it is, then you're not a party to a social contract that you did not sign. And finally, if myself and my beautiful fiance can't vote that Harry has to give us all of his money because there's two of us and one of Harry, well, it doesn't matter if there's three of us, four of us, 10 of us, 20 million of us. There's no magical additional person that makes something immoral and illogical now moral and logical just because the mob wants to lynch Palestinians or rob Peter to pay Paul. There is no magical additional person that makes that moral and legitimate. And
But
so government has really been the biggest scam in all of human history. It is, and most people have never thought about it, and they've never been allowed to hear this other side. And so in many ways, this is, a pirate broadcast. It's the Nebuchadnezzar from the movie The Matrix, and we're, coming up to death to send our pirate signal and to cut through what I call the propaganda matrix of monopoly media, of mandatory government schools, running the Prussian model of education, of the algorithmic censorship of social media, and so you may be like a lot of your audience may be, hearing this for the first time, and now as an adult have the ability to step back and analyze the what they were told as a child, because a lot of this, this indoctrinated belief system is slipped to kids before they're old enough to really evaluate the morality or the logic of what they're being told about government. So it really takes a special kind of person that has an open mind that can go, hey, wait a minute. You can't really delegate a right you don't have yourself, and you can't really vote to steal somebody's money. And so now, for the first time in people's life, they're like, wait a minute, this is starting to explain what's going on. And so that's I wanted to set the table with that. And then what was the rest of your question? I forgot. I wanted, because I know we were going to move. Oh,
I,
voluntarism.
No,
Voluntarism.
no. Even before that,
Yeah.
it's very important to emphasize the importance of self-ownership and the extension, which is property, because people here actually fall to the idea that they are part of the state, as if the state is one big organism and human beings are just a cell in the system, like Plato was advocating. So we have to remove this spell and delusion and to remind them of their life and their freedom. And kindly, with your help them understand it.
Oh, absolutely. So the really the good news message of my work is that you really don't need government. That everything the government does would be done better and faster and cheaper by the free market. Everything the government does would be, without, there wouldn't be waste, the same waste, fraud, abuse, malinvestment, in society. And all of that starts in the kind of the understanding of the immorality of government and the morality of this alternative to government that I call voluntarism, and other people call voluntarism. Some people call it peaceful anarchism. Anarchy is a word that scares a lot of people, but the word anarchy just means no rulers. It doesn't mean no rules. It means no rulers, but because the rulers don't want the population to know that there's an option on the menu called no rulers, the rulers use the monopoly media system and even control of the dictionary. And I break that down in my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, of how they actually changed the dictionary to change the meaning of the word anarchism from no rulers to chaos and dystopia. Okay. And so it just means no rulers. So monarchy is ruled by one. Oligarchy is ruled by a small group. Kleptocracy is ruled by thieves. And so you can have governance without government. You can have everything. People, the one thing that people need to understand is you can have everything that the government does, all the service. So if you really think about it, the government is a provider of services, whether that service is armed protective services that they call the police, whether that service is dispute resolution that they call the courts, whether that service is protection, against foreign invaders that they call national defense, whether that service is running the post office, whether that service is running a national train system here in the United States. The government runs the worst train system in the free world. Whatever that service is, air traffic control is an example. Like all of these services could be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market. And that makes sense. And all of that starts with self-ownership. You own your body. You own your mind. That is your number one piece of property. And because you own it, you have the right to defend your life, your liberty, and your property. So you can hire a private security company to exercise that right on your behalf, because that is a right that you actually own. And because you own your body and you have the right to defend it, you can hire somebody, and that's logical, and that's moral. Now, when you dial, the private security company because somebody's breaking into your house and they get to your house, here in the United States, the police frequently claim the ability to arrest people for victimless crimes. If they if they come to my house and they see that my neighbor has got a poker game going on, well, that's gambling. That's illegal in many places in the United States, and they can kick in the door and they can try and arrest everybody at the poker table. Well, because you don't have the ability to tell your neighbor whether he should be, having a poker game, or you don't have the ability to tell your neighbor whether or not he should be smoking a plant, or you don't have the ability to tell your neighbor whether he should be paying a woman to love him, or you don't have the ability, all of these things, you're not able to delegate a right And so the Armed Protective Service Company can't prosecute people for victimless crimes, but they can defend your life, your liberty, and property because you have the ability to delegate that, because that's inherent. Now, because you own your body, that also shows the immorality and the illogic of the state and the government, because what they're doing when they tax you is they're saying, hey, you have to work for us. In the United States, we have a thing called Tax Freedom Day, and it's in June and July, depending on what, tax bracket you're in. Okay. But essentially, we've got almost a 50% effective tax, tax on each individual when you include the income tax, when you include the hidden taxes. We got a lot of hidden taxes in the United States. So every time you get a glass of wine, every time, if you're a smoker, if you buy a pack of cigarettes or a cigar, every time you pay your telephone bill, every time you pay your cable TV bill, every time you pay your mobile phone bill, every time you get a gallon of gas, every time you buy an airline ticket, every time you get a hotel room, we got a gazillion like hidden taxes. And then we have the biggest tax that most people understand, which is the tax of inflation. And so the government is literally stealing the value out of people's money. Oh, now we have tariffs. So now Trump is very famously, putting tariffs on imported goods, which is a tax that the importer passes on to the final consumer. So we're paying all of these taxes, and it's kind of like a Jedi mind trick that Trump is doing on conservatives, making them think that the importer is paying it, which I assure you he's not. And so that Tax Freedom Day is in June or July. So every day in January, February, March, April, May, June, you're working for no money. It's a slavery system. They're forcing you to work the same as if you made them, as if they made the Israeli people or the American people pick cotton in a field for 6 months. Now they're nice enough to spread it out over the entire year, and they allow you to take some, keep some home, and keep it until you have to pay the hidden taxes and everything like that. But that is immoral, because they're claiming that they own your body and the product of your labor and the product of your time. And that is slavery, no matter how you disguise it, no matter what words you use to disguise it.
Yeah, I would like to push back a little bit as a devil advocate, because you spoke about the importance of the free market, and people here in Israel, some of them might think capitalism and what we have today is capitalism. They don't understand it's crony capitalism, which is completely sick and under the management of those psychopaths. Can you explain to them the difference?
Oh yeah. So in a free market, in a genuine free market with genuine free people, that is what produces the most amount of wealth and prosperity, when people are allowed to pursue their own ends, when they're allowed to choose the business that they're best at, when they're allowed to choose who they associate with, and they're allowed to cooperate and collaborate. And so you can have a very dynamic economy. You can have, there's a well-recognized economic principle called spontaneous order, where order emerges out of disorder. And so you don't need to have a hierarchical top-down control of government to be able to have a very sophisticated economy. Some examples of this are like the grocery store. A grocery store is effectively coordinating the activities of millions and millions of people around the world, the people that plant the food, the people that harvest the food, the people that process the food, the people that truck the food, the people that retail, do the retail displays and do the marketing and make the packaging and make the farm implements and make the, it's an unbelievably complicated system of millions of different people, thousands and thousands of different individual jobs, with no hierarchical top-down control at all. And yet, here in the United States, we've got avocados in January, and we've got strawberries in February, and in the winter months, we've got food from 200, maybe 200 countries in the average high-end American grocery store without any kind of top-down centralization, language developed without any top-down hierarchical, control
Yeah.
system. The monetary system of gold and silver that produced economic stability before fiat paper currencies, before paper money, before government mandated paper money became the thing. That system, arose out of spontaneous order. Your cell phone is another example where you've got like hundreds and hundreds of components, from the Wi-Fi to the battery to the glass to the circuit boards to the chips to the software, thousands of software companies, all of them coming together, everybody being paid for their contribution to the ultimate product that produces, a supercomputer in your hand or in your pocket. No, there is, again, no top-down hierarchical control. It's all individuals, and so you don't really need government to have very, very sophisticated, economies and systems. Now, to your specific question, what was it? Remind me.
I'm not sure about that, because we spoke about self-ownership and all the rest of it, and you answer to that. Maybe we can, because you explain so many things. You are like, everything is compressed, but maybe we can speak about how do
Oh,
they.
crony capitalism. Crony capitalism. Sorry, it was crony
Yes.
capitalism. Oh, so what's the difference? So
Yes.
in capitalism, you've got an organic, natural kind of free market. And the opposite of that is something that is known as crony capitalism or cronyism in economics. And what that is it's not a true free market. And so in both the United States and Israel, there's not a true free market in money. I'm
Mhm.
assuming that your currency is losing value the way our currency was. If Israelis and Americans had the ability to only use currency that maintained its value, if they weren't forced to use the government's money, then they would have more purchasing power, that their currency unit would have more value year after year. Your dollar or your shekel should be buying more and more and more every single year as innovations and productivity improvements reduce the cost of either manufacturing or distributing the luxuries and necessities of life. But instead, we've got money that loses value because they're interfering with that free market dynamic.
Mhm.
In the United States, we have, and I'm sure in Israel, there are state-sponsored monopolies where, Federal Express, UPS, DHL, they can't deliver first-class mail because the Postal Service has a monopoly on first-class mail.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, there's no private company that can offer air traffic control because the Federal Aviation Administration has claimed a monopoly over air traffic control. There's nothing that says the government has to do air traffic control. Canada, a lot of people don't realize this, Canada is the second largest air traffic control system in the world. They privatized their air traffic control system well over a decade ago. It's a completely private system, tens of thousands of employees, hundreds and hundreds, not well, dozens and dozens of towers and airfields, and just a huge sprawling, air traffic control system managing thousands and thousands of flights, and planes
Mhm.
aren't dropping out of the sky in Canada.
But
But
they
every
do in
time,
America with the FAA. You had the example of 9/11. How amazing the job they did on that day.
yes, yes. So
Yeah.
the other thing is, so then when the government takes over something, there is the ability for tomfoolery and scams and failures of the kind, because there's nobody held accountable, there's nobody held responsible. And so the overall point is all of these, whether it's monopoly privileges, whether it's mandatory government money, whether it's them taking half your income and overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation, and then redirecting it to weapon systems that we may or may not need, to fight manufactured enemies. Here in the United States, we manufacture enemies so that we can then fight them, so that they can extract the taxes and they can, pay the, pay the weapons manufacturers money for weapon systems that we don't need. And so the joke is, in the past, weapons were manufactured to fight wars, and now wars are manufactured to fight to make weapons.
Yes.
And so these are some of the things that that limit the economic growth. And so it's not a free market. It's not capitalism. It's technically called crony capitalism or cronyism, and it reduces the amount of prosperity in the country. It reduces the amount of disposable income that people have. It reduces the amount of purchasing power that the currency has. It creates artificial scarcity. I believe it's a form of economic warfare on the population. And a lot of these wars, what I believe, and is that if you're running government on a group, so if you think of government as a technique for robbing and controlling the population, okay, then it's really not, in the case of the United States, it's not the United States versus Russia, or the United States versus Israel, or China. It's the people of the United States versus the bankers and the government that is running government and the monopoly media on the population. And so that the real enemy is the bankers, the government, and the monopoly media. And so if you don't want the population to be able to overthrow you, then why don't you indoctrinate the population into an artificial belief system and fight them off against another government? So you take the alpha males of a country, and the other government takes their alpha males, and you fight the alpha males against each other, and you kill them off till you're left with a soup of beta males that aren't willing to oppose the government. And now you menace your population with this government's and that government menaces their population with you. And so now you divide and conquer the population, and that system of engineered wars both enriches the arms industry at the same time that it kills off the alpha males that might figure out how the big game is run, and might turn their attention towards the government, the banks, and the monopoly media that has been indoctrinating them into this artificial belief system.
Incredible. Yes. Actually, I would like for you to speak about the term democide, because part of what governments are doing to their own people was described in a book by a professor from the University of Hawaii called Democide. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Maybe you can describe how brutal and severe it is towards that governments are doing to their own people, because it's not only extortion and theft and rape, it's actually murder, like you said about the alpha male, which are being sent to the battlefield. But maybe you can introduce the idea of democide a little more.
Sure. So the scholar that you're referring to is R.J. Rummel, and he coined the term democide, which is death by government. And you're statistically, for every single person on this planet listening to the sound of my voice and not listening to the sound of my voice, statistically, the most dangerous thing that you will ever face is your own government. Governments or another governments are the number one cause of murder. And in the 20th century, it was close to, I can't remember if it was over or almost 200 million people were killed by their own government. And
the last time I checked the webpage, it said 262 million people.
262 million. Yeah. And so the big ones were the Chinese, which are, I think, somewhere around 80 million. Yeah. There was the Russian, the Bolshevik Revolution killed off tens of millions. World War I, World War II, Pol Pot,
In
Nazi
Cambodia, yeah,
Germany. We can go, Cambodia,
yeah.
Vietnam. We can kind of go down the list of kind of the best known examples of those, but also in the COVID, so besides the books, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, and To See the Cages, to Leave It, the thing I'm known for is we did an investigative series into who was behind the COVID called Solving COVID, the COVID-19 eugenics vaccine drug scam timeline, where there's probably 20 million people globally that were killed by the vaccines, which is over, three times, it was around three times more than the around 7 million supposedly that died of the COVID. And I think that number has been exaggerated in a variety of ways that I break down in the investigation. But governments do things like we're going to force vaccines on you. We're going to conscript you and put you into these engineered wars to sell weapons or to kill off our alpha males or whatever it is. We're going to, in the case of the Chinese and the Russians, we're going to collectivize farming, and we're even though that bankrupts and creates famine. 7 million people died in Ukraine as an
Hmm.
example, through the collectivization of farms under the Bolshevik Revolution. And so the government's going to make some kind of decision that is going to typically kill millions and millions of people. And again, I believe this is they're managing their populations the way that you would manage livestock. They're saying they know their policies are going to impact prosperity, and so they're going to have people that are going to be angry in the streets. So why don't we just kill them off in some kind of way? And that's the hard, cold truth of government. And to your point, over 200 million people in the 20th century alone, were killed off by their own governments through some of these ways that we've just discussed. So the government is the most dangerous thing to your life, even if they're presenting themselves as your protector, even if they're presenting themselves as a human rights organization. At the end of the day, they're running a variety of unethically manipulative techniques on the population to get them to go along with the taxes, to get them to go along with the laws that they make away, to get them to go along with the monopoly privileges they give their friends in business and industry, to get them to go along with fiat dollars cranked out by private banks through fractional reserve banking, forced on the population by government fiat or degree. Whatever it is, they're tricking the population. And so that's the other thing I'm kind of known for, is exposing the playbook that governments use to unethically manipulate the population into going along with government in the first place. So most governments are running a playbook of unethically manipulative techniques, and we can go through that playbook. And I think that your audience will recognize, like, wait a minute, the Israeli government's doing that. The
Hmm.
Israeli government's doing that. Wait a
Yes.
minute, the Israeli government's doing that, because it's the same playbook among all governments. So I think
So
that
let's
might
do
be,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to share my screen right now.
Hmm. I would just like to add about the COVID, the pandemic that you mentioned. Another thing that they did was to cause so much injury, and also the biggest wealth transfer from the middle class to the corporation, and to prepare the society to that technocracy that is about to control and rule every aspect of our life soon.
So the subtitle of my book,
Hmm.
Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, is how intergenerational organized crime runs the government, the media, and academia.
Hmm.
And that's one of the big ideas, that all of these governments are controlling the information that their populations receive through the mandatory government school, the state university system, and monopolization of the media, and in the modern age, the algorithmic censorship of social media. And so we'll break that down. In the first part of the book, what I do is I break down 20 plus techniques used by intergenerational organized crime to create the culture of slavery and tax slavery, and I show how it manifested in each time and place. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what I do in each of these techniques is I explain the technique, okay,
Yeah.
and then I show what it looked like in Nazi Germany, the US government, the Soviet Union, and East Germany. I would like to have a Israeli version of this book where we take out East Germany and we replace it with Israel, and we break it down from an Israeli point of view. I'd like to have, regional copies, and that's on the horizon, and I'm looking for somebody in Israel that would like to fund and support that.
Mm-hmm.
But the first technique that I break down is the flag is the artificially indoctrinated holy symbol. And what I mean by holy symbol is that the governments are making government a religion. They're not calling it a religion, but they're using all of the tricks and the techniques of an unethically manipulative religion or a cult to slide the belief in government into the population as a religion, and the flag is the Star of David, the Christian cross. It is the artificially indoctrinated holy symbol, and
Mm-hmm.
then in the media will come along and they'll run a variety of techniques where in the movies and in the popular shows they'll product place the flag at moments of high positive emotion. They'll do flag worship at the stadium events. They're going to do a bunch of things to give you a warm and fuzzy about the flag that are unethically manipulative and tricks, and we'll get into that in a second. But essentially, the flag is the number one. Next, there's a holy document. And the holy document is, again, it's that social contract that you did not sign, but is forced upon you. And even the worst, even in the worst, and I picked, the Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and East Germany because everybody agrees they were despotic, they were tyrannical, but they all had constitutions. They all and the idea that you owe up to half your income to the government and overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation, all because dozens or hundreds of years ago, people got together in a room and wrote down on a fancy piece of paper that they alone get to make up rules for everybody and steal the wealth of others is a dumb idea. Like it's a dumb idea that most people really, they fall for because they slide it to them as a child. But if you were to try and, say, if we said, hey, I'm coming to Israel and I'm going to get a bunch of people in a room and we're going to write down that we're the new government, and then we're going to have some elections and a couple hundred people or 1,000 people or whatever, we trick them into voting. And we say because 1,000 people, and that's essentially the background of the United States. I'm sure it's a little bit different in Israel, but probably not much.
Mm-hmm.
But when our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, there were 3 million people living on the continent, and less than 1% voted in the first election. And now suddenly, because they tricked some people into voting, now all of a sudden all 3 million people have got to pay taxes and fall in line. And they produced an army, and they were able to force compliance, and they took over the schools and they took over the newspapers. And I break it down in the book on how they did it in the United States. But
Yeah.
like, that's the way that you do it. Now, the third technique is the mandatory government school running the Prussian model of education.
Yeah.
And so the government is God. The president or the prime minister is the pope. The teacher is the priest. The school is the church of the religion. In the United States, you're going to do the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance, where students are forced to put their hand over their heart and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. That's the common prayer of the religion. You're going to sing the hymns of the religion. So we have a national anthem, and we have the Star Spangled Banner, and we have, you know, uh, we've got hymns that are taught to the school children and they're going to participate. The children will be taken to Mecca. Mecca is the
Washington.
Washington D.C.
Hmm.
And so in middle school we're going to take the children to Mecca. We're going to show them the cathedral of the capital that looks like the Vatican for a reason. We're going to take them to the temples. We're going to show them the deities of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln. The temples are what we call the memorials, and it's very hushed and it's very reverent. And they're going to be subsumed into the state religion as children. The Prussian model of education is kind of fascinating because Israel's using the Prussian model of education. Almost every government uses this educational model where the government runs the school and a government employee, the teacher, teaches the children. And a lot of people don't know, but that system came out of the 1800s in Prussia, which is formerly, which is now kind of East Germany. And the Prussians were losing on the battlefield of Europe. And back then, if you were in the Prussian army, most likely you got drunk in a bar one night and you got what's called impressed into the military, and you woke up and you're in the army and you don't really have a lot of choice about it. And so, you're playing, you didn't have a lot of economic options anyway. So, you're getting 3 square meals a day, you're playing cards with your buddies, but eventually you get rolled out on a battlefield and now it's kind of life and death. And so what ended up happening is that once they got rolled out on the battlefield, everybody said, all right, thanks for all the meals and the cards, but I'm out of here. And they would leave. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the red coats, the English, wore those bright red coats. The Hessians wore bright green coats. Well, part of the reason that they would dress the troops in these bright colors was so they would recognize when you were AWOL. So there was like no way for you to really easily run away because like there's a guy in the red coat or there's the guy in the green coat and he's obviously AWOL, because they would just desert so often because they didn't have a gun in the fight. And so what the Prussians did is the Prussians said, hey, we need to raise them up in the ideology of the state. And they were really the first ones that created these mandatory government schools where they would then raise the population in the ideology of the state. And what they found were, because there's a religious component, the statism, the belief in having a state, the belief in the necessity of having a state, the desirability of having a state, the belief on the legitimacy of having a state. That's the religious component, but there's also an obedience component. And so there's a hidden curriculum in the government school system that produces obedience to authority and submission to the government. It's the drill bells, it's the walking in lines, it's requiring permission to use the restroom from a government employee. It's assigned seating. It's the warrantless searches, the ability to have your bag searched and have yourself searched at any time. It's that you can't go home. It's the public shaming. It's the collective punishment. In the United States, they use these red, yellow, green troublemaker boards. It's the association of the monopoly police and the military through the school system so that you come up thinking it's natural for the government to be in your business all the time. And so there's a whole bunch of like little techniques that nobody really thinks about that produce obedience. And so the Prussians went from having the worst army on the continent to having the best army in a generation. And the reason they were best is, number one, they would join. They were now in the religion and they thought it was their duty, and so they're going to join the military and they're going to fight. And there's an obedience component, so they would walk into cannon fire. You could order them to walk into cannon fire, and they're going to walk into cannon fire, and that's just how it is. And like that, though, so then people said, "What happened, Prussia?" And Prussia's like, and so like countries from all over the world sent delegations to Prussia. The United States sent a delegation to Prussia saying, "What happened?" And they're like, We get them when they're young. We put them in these schools, do whatever we say. They'll goose step, whatever. And so that's how all these countries came to have the exact same government school system.
Yeah.
Uh,
I would like to remind the audience that they actually devised this system of compulsory, how do you say it, like mandatory education after the defeat to Napoleon in the Battle of Jena in
yeah.
1806. And if you read the writings of the philosophers who supported this system, like Fichte and others, you can see the level of insanity in how they basically took control of our children and turned them into obedient how to say it, meat grinders in the army. So
You
yeah.
know, so I want to, that's an excellent point, Harry, and I want to reinforce that. And I have a quote from Fichte right here. It's not, and by the way, this is not like my opinion. Okay, this is their own writings, and so they were very open. Like it was funny because they didn't. There was no alternative media. There was no reason to hide what they're doing because nobody knew what they were doing except them. So they were very open. And so Johann Fichte, the architect of the Prussian system, said the new education must consist essentially in this, that it completely destroys freedom of will in the soil which it undertakes to cultivate in children's minds, and produces, on the contrary, strict necessity in the decisions of the will of the opposite being impossible. So we're going to destroy kids' individual will and we're going to replace it with the will of the state. And so they were it's not a conspiracy theory. Like you can go read their own writings. They were very specific in what they were doing. They were engineering it for a purpose. And so anyway, I just wanted to, make that. So then, and this is one I know that the Israeli people are going to understand. There is a youth program to teach citizenship, blind obedience, and state flag worship. And so there's really two different programs that are going on with the government school. There's one program that is producing taxpayers that are going to tithe, that are going to, semi-voluntarily give up their, some of their money, and they're going to turn it over to the government semi-voluntarily. It's their duty to pay taxes. I'm a proud taxpayer or whatever. But then governments require what are known as order followers. And this is the police and the military. And order followers are people that are willing to set their morality aside and use violence on peaceful people for the government. So they need people that are going to act immorally and use violence on peaceful people that aren't hurting anybody else, okay? They're going to have to suffer the karma for that, okay? But they need people willing to use violence on peaceful people, either on their own citizens to enforce the commandments, the laws of the religion, the commandments. Again, it's a religion. The religion has commandments. We call them laws, or to raise revenue on the population. And so in the United States, the police are used to fine people. They charge people outrageous amounts of money for going 5-10 miles over the speed limit, or not having your blinker working, or whatever it is. They can tax. They're raising revenue on the population, and so they need scumbags that are going to go out and rob their neighbors for the government. And so to be able to produce order followers, that starts in the United States and in Israel with a youth program. In the United States, it's the Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Explorer program. And so now we're going to get the kids into these government affiliated programs, and we're going to give them awards. We're going to give them Cub Scout Adventure Loops and Boy Scout merit badges for regurgitating, for learning and demonstrating their duties as a citizen, the reverence for and worship of the flag. We're going to put them into the uniform. Okay, so the word uniform means single form. And so the uniform is an artificially an artificial group identity, that we're going to compact the kids into a group identity where there's this pressure to participate, social pressure. We're going to put them in situations where everybody else is doing the Pledge of Allegiance, everybody else is doing the flag ceremonies, everybody else is wearing the uniform. We're we're going to give them, take them, out in the woods. We're going to, there's a
Maybe
lot of
get some water.
yeah, there's a lot of good things about scouting in the United States. You get to go hiking, you get to go camping, you get to go rock climbing, you get to go to these. They've got unbelievable facilities for the kids. But the analogy I like to use is, rat poison is 99% good food. Otherwise, the rats wouldn't eat it. And so
Yes.
what they're going to do is they're going to take the poison of statism. They're going to take the poison of this indoctrinated religion. They're going to take the poison of using violence on peaceful people, and they're going to wrap it in the 99% good food of rock climbing and camping and hiking and getting outside and everything like that. And so they're going to begin conditioning kids to the hierarchical command of the military and being in the uniform, the love of the uniform, the hierarchical command and control over conscience and basic morality. And they're ultimately going to produce these order followers that are willing to kill for the state. Now, again, so Nazi Germany, the US government, Soviet Union, East Germany, they're all run, and Israel, they're all running there's a playbook, and the worst countries in the world, Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, East Germany, okay, the United States and Israel are running the exact same playbook as Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, and East Germany. Are you
Yeah,
feeling it yet?
I do.
Now, we so then the youth program will, around high school, will morph into a different program where the children will begin to be militarized and indoctrinated to accept more hierarchical command and control, more obedience to authority, military training, flag worship, pride of uniform, obedience to the federal government, to the Israeli military, to the US military. They will be segmented away from the rest of the population onto military bases during the summer months. They will be 100% given over to, in the United States, the program is called the Explorers. In Nazi Germany, it was called the Hitler Youth. In Soviet Union, it was called the Komsomol. In East Germany, it was called the Free Youth Movement. What is it called in Israel? Do you what's the equivalent in Israel, Harry?
I think it's called the Tsofim.
The what?
Tsofim.
Safim, okay.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to give the kids guns. We're going to shave their heads so the uniform single form creates this artificial group dynamic, this engineered group dynamic. The shaving of the head also creates, it replaces your individual appearance with this artificial group appearance. It's a cult indoctrination technique. The Hare Krishnas do the same thing. The almost all cults make you wear the uniform, of the group, or shave your head, or do whatever it is. And so they're going to run these unethically manipulative techniques on the kids. In the United States, they've got 2,000 posts for law enforcement explorers. So now the kids are going to get in like little mini police uniforms, and they're going to go on ride-alongs with the police, and they're going to begin getting the kids indoctrinated into the police and the military. There's academy programs run by the FBI, the DEA, the Secret Service, the Border Patrol, military police, and others. So they're going to start getting the kids, and they're going to get them into these programs. And one of them is called JROTC. So in our own high schools, Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, in high school, we're going to give the kids uniforms. We're going to, indoctrinate them into the, military command and control, hierarchical command and control. and we're going to integrate it into the school system. They're going to, we're going to give them monetary incentives. We're going to do, all kinds of tricks in the college. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to pay for their education. So we're going to essentially begin paying to get them into these programs. Pledges and oaths are forced on the kids. I gave you the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
Mm-hmm.
one nation under God. But Nazi Germany had a pledge for kids. The Soviet Union had a pledge for kids. East Germany had the same thing. Does Israel have an equivalent?
Yeah, of course.
What is it?
When you go to the army and you finish your tironut, the early stage of preparation, you have to take a vow to the flag and to the army and the nation of Israel, of course.
So again, it's a playbook. Everybody's running the same thing. Now, I know this one goes on in Israel. So the military and the police are artificially glorified and celebrated. So in the US, the government, the propaganda system of the monopoly media, and affiliated cartel companies promote the sanctity of the military with preferred parking, discounts, priority boarding at the airport, ceremonies at stadium events. And these benefits and rituals promote militarism, so the slaves are propagandized to worship the people that are enforcing the tax slavery on them. And often those perpetrating these practices and delusions believe in them wholeheartedly themselves. And, so in the soldiers' defense, many join the military with the best of intentions and are awake to criminality, how they're being used, but they are running this game on the population. And the US, so every time in the book where you see this hypertext link, you can click through and you can see the scholarship and the research behind the claim. But a
Mhm.
couple of years ago, the government was actually caught paying 53 million a year to the National Football League and to the National Basketball Association and the National Hockey League. They were paying them to do these flag worship ceremonies. And the fact that that is artificial, the fact they have to pay for it and everything, that's part of the fact that it is artificial is it's artificial. And
It's
so,
also being done in the movies. They push it nonstop.
oh, we're
For
gonna
example,
get to that. Oh, we're not. We haven't. Like, we're just scratching the surface. And so political rallies use spectacle neuralistic. They're essentially political rallies are the equivalent of religious revivals. We're going to get the religiously faithful to come, and we're going to put on a religious revival. We're going to have the iconography of the religion, the flags, and the and all of that. I'm sure you've seen that in your own country. Politician worship. And so the participants frequently engage in the worship of the artificially created, promoted political leader, the savior, not understanding that this organized crime system is leveraging knowledge of human psychology to exploit most, but not all humans' biological desire for a leader or a father figure. And so most people don't realize this, but there's a lot of behavioral psychology. It's called evolutionary. What is the name of it? It's hold on. It's evolutionary leadership theory. And
mhm.
evolutionary leadership theory says that, most human beings, because we have a tribal past and tribal background, and we came from tribal systems, that it was advantageous to have a strong leader. And so so there's a biological desire in most people for a leader or a father figure, unless you yourself are a leader. And then so most people need to have that leader. They want that leader. They innately want it. So the system presents two different potential leaders. In the United States, we've got a red government leader that's designed to appeal to kind of rural conservatives, and we have a blue government leader designed to appeal to urban liberals. And then both of those leaders, Biden and Trump, okay, both of those artificial leaders, they're doing the exact same thing. They're on the exact same playbook on 95% of everything that's important to the real owners of the country. But they argue about what we call football issues, but it's a fake Hobson's choice. People begin to associate with their preferred leader, and they get religiously attached to their leader, not understanding that the system is manipulating the behavioral psychology about their innate desire to have a leader, to offer them this fake Hobson's choice of two that they're, presenting and putting up to the population.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you brought this up a little bit ago, and so the use of propaganda. And so in the United States, it's come out that the CIA, our intelligence agencies, the equivalent of the Mossad, and the Department of Defense have direct involvement in over, this is actually an old figure. It's now over 1,000 movies, 1,000 television shows that we know of. So the Department of Defense and the intelligence agencies, they have an office in Hollywood, and if you want to use any of the military gear, military bases, tanks, airplanes, Top Gun Maverick, whatever it is, you've got to hand over your script, and they're going to go through it, and they're going to actually, in some cases, change history. They're going to make the military look great. If you don't make the military look great, you'll never get any of the goodies again. It's millions and millions and tens, in some cases, tens and tens of millions of dollars worth of military equipment, fuel, jet fuel, the use of billion-dollar aircraft carriers and ships and planes and Air Force bases and helicopters and you name it. And so all of the movies go along with it, or they don't get the goodies. And so they're actually, in many cases, changing history. And the directors understand this. And so they're using a variety of unethically manipulative techniques in the movie to anchor moments of high positive emotion to the flag, to the US flag, to the Israeli flag, to whatever. All of the countries are essentially running it. So if you, in the book, if you click through to this link right here, there's you'll get we'll screen pop a video. Hold on. And there's a little, video here that goes through just 12 Michael Bay movies. And
Mm-hmm.
in just 12 Michael Bay movies, they've product placed over exactly 469 flags. And so there's a little bing, and there's a little ding, and you're going to see the flags as they go through these movies. And just the second or two that the flag is on the screen, you're going to see it. And most people never really realized how, common this is for them to put in, all of these flags. But in just 12 movies, there's 469 product placements of the American flag. And so typically they're also doing that at moments of high positive emotion. So Rocky, I don't know if you've ever seen if the
Yeah,
movie Rocky is popular in Israel or not, but
it is.
Rocky win, it's a whole buildup. Is Rocky going to win? And then Rocky wins, and yes, he drapes himself in the American flag. And so that is a marketing technique called anchoring, where the propagandist, the director, will build the movie up to a moment of this high positive emotion. All of the motion of the movie, there's it all rides to this one thing. Then they're going to show you the flag, show you the flag, show you the flag, show you the flag, and they're going to anchor that moment of high positive emotion to the flag. And so then everybody has a warm and fuzzy for the Israeli flag or the American flag, and they don't know why. And they just think, and they don't realize that the governments are using these unethically manipulative tricks on them through the media. They're using manufactured news, overt or surreptitious control of publishers, editors, and reporters to create an artificial reality. And so in the in this system, this is a visualization that we have in the book that shows. Let's just see if it'll pop here. Hold on. It's a visualization that shows that three organizations have maneuvered their members. The organizations are in the United States: the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and the Trilateral Commission
Mm-hmm.
have maneuvered their members into dozens and dozens of ostensibly independent media organizations. everything from the Financial Times to the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, the New York Post, Sun, Sky News, NBC News, The Economist, Time Magazine, the Times of London, the Washington Post, CNN, CBS, ABC News, Disney, ESPN, Newsweek, the Daily Beast, Associated Press, and others. All of them that are ostensibly independent, the key reporters, editors, and publishers are in these three organizations that coincidentally, Jeffrey Epstein, suspected Mossad blackmailer Jeffrey Epstein, was a member of all three of these organizations. And so they're getting their members together and they're getting their members together on a regular basis in secure facilities that have been swept by bugs. And so now, you can kind of see that, oh, well, I guess they could pull off a scam like the COVID. I guess they could pull off a scam like 9/11. I guess they could trick the population into something like October 7th or into a variety of different things by controlling, again, the information that the population receives about the legitimacy of government, what it's doing, and other things. They all use false flag events, manufactured intelligence, and lies to start wars. Again, our equivalent is 9/11. Your equivalent might be October 7th. I think you get the idea. They're all using the same bag of tricks. They all use political assassination of rivals, whistleblowers, and dissidents. And I think, knowing the history of Ragoon and others, I think Israel probably has the same, suspicious deaths among.
Yeah, we do.
And who are the most, out of curiosity, who's the most like our, like ours or John F. Kennedy,
Yeah.
Robert
So
Kennedy?
in our case, I think the best example would be Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister who was murdered in 1995. So
Okay.
people should, look into that because the narrative is completely broken if you actually see the evidence.
So again, it's a playbook. It's holding up for Israel. We political temples dedicated to the state and the deities. I mentioned that they're going to take the kids to Washington D.C. in middle school, and they're going to take them into the monuments of. This is the Lincoln Memorial. Nazi Germany had the Aaron Temple. Moscow was building the Palace of the Soviets before they ran out of money. I'm assuming that there's some temples in Israel. What's the equivalent?
We have the Knesset, which is
Yeah.
the parliament built and sponsored by the Rothschilds, and we have the High Court of Law, also paid and designed by the Rothschilds, and we even have a little pyramid on the top of it with a lovely eye, to illustrate, and even an obelisk. There is a garden outside of this High Court of Law, and there is an obelisk, a small obelisk there, just to to complete the picture.
Perfect. So monopoly government fiat money that steals the value secretly for the population. So again, all of these countries and Israel, I know for a fact Israel's got a central bank. I know for a fact that you've got unbacked fiat paper tickets issued by a private central bank. And so they're, again, we're forcing the population to use our money, spying on the citizens. I know for a fact Israel is spying on its population, just like the United States is spying on us, and the Gestapo spied on Nazi Germany, and the KGB spied on the Soviet Union, and the Stasi spied on East Germany. So I know that that's going on in Israel, and I know that your population realizes it, so I won't dwell there. They all use torture as policy. So, and this is evidence of kakistocracy. And, we talked about, anarchy is ruled by no one, and oligarchy is ruled by a few, and a kleptocracy is ruled by thieves. A kakistocracy is ruled by the worst scum imaginable. And it really is evidence of statist mind control, where the members of the cult will follow any order, no matter how immoral, cruel, and or continue to support the government when they find out that the government is torturing or committing these heinous, crimes. It really is mind control to follow the government, and that's what we're exposing here. Is the government's using these mind control techniques to get people to go along with torture, and so it's a cult, and the cult members are willing to do the most heinous of things when they're instructed to, and the population is so mind controlled that they'll go along with it when it comes out. They all have secret prisons, for-profit prisons for victimless crimes, concentration camps, and black sites. So all of these governments are running gulag systems. It's the gulag in the Soviet Union. It's the concentration camps and the forced ghettoization in Nazi Germany. It's the ghettoization of Gaza. It's the ghettoization of the Palestinians in the camps. And I'm sure you've got, we have black sites. The CIA has black sites in a dozen countries. We've got sites in the United States where people are disappeared into. We've got Guantanamo Bay. We ran internment camps for our Japanese citizens, people of Japanese descent in World War II. And again, it's just one of those things where you realize, hey, wait a minute. These governments, they're all running the same playbook, and they're doing things that are really, nobody can really, justify. They all use conscription to forcefully enslave people to fight wars and further indoctrinate them into the government's ideology and discipline. And I know that Israel, everybody's forced into it. 100% mandatory participation. Do you want to talk about that?
It's true, except for the religious, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, which the government is also trying to put into the draft. But yes, every man and woman, when they reach the age of 18, they have to join the army. The men have to do it for 3 years, and 2 years for the ladies. And of course, they break their minds, they indoctrinate them into the systems and turn them into potential, like you said, the alpha men of this country are dying on the battlefield for unnecessary invented wars.
Right, right. Um, the Also, when you go into the military, especially in the United States, and I have an entire another book, on this. So my second book is called "To See the Cage is to Leave It," and I break down. This one is the kind of the religious piece, like we kind of glazed over and talked a little bit about the religious pieces of it. But in this book, I break down 25 techniques that we use. And by the way, it's idolatry. So statism, the belief in having a government, is a form of idolatry. It's a graven image into which men have read supernatural powers and superhuman capacities. The state can feed us when we are hungry, heal us when we are ill. It can raise wages and lower prices even at the same time. It can educate our children without cost. It can provide us against the contingencies of old age. What cannot the state do for us if only we have faith in it? And so it is religious idolatry, and it produces cult members that then exhibit, the kind of classic, cult indoctrination. The
Yeah.
government is God, politicians are the prophets, the flag is the idol, the commandments are the laws, praying is a form of praying, tithing is the voting. But in the book, what I do is I break down, the techniques that they're using on the kids in the military. This is what a JROTC looks like in our American high schools. I'm sure you've got probably the exact same thing. These are police officers with the shaved heads going through the unethic, and I break down kind of the unethically manipulative techniques used on the police. But in the military and basic training, okay, and then I'm assuming this is the exact same as in Israel, but the military is segmented away from the general population. They're isolated onto military bases where their communications with the outside world are curtailed. In the United States, during basic training, they are forced to undergo a variety of unethically manipulative techniques, including verbal and physical abuse, excessive stress, degradation, humiliation, sleep deprivation, isolation, and the artificial conformity of the uniform, the single form, and the shaving of the head, replacing the individual physical appearance with a group appearance, further reinforcing the artificially created group dynamic. In the United States, the military services are notorious for inciting peer pressure and collective punishment. And I don't know if you guys have this. Do y'all have the blanket party in
Yeah,
Israel?
we have sometimes, especially in the units which are, how to say it, like the one who will eventually go to the front.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we have the blanket party too. And for those that aren't familiar with the blanket party, if you're non-conforming and you're not going along with the program, it will be your unit will be leaned on by the drill sergeants and the instructors to get you in line. And so what they do is they wrap your blanket around you at night, and then everybody in the unit hits you if they don't like if it's just whatever they'll put a soap bar in a sock in a towel. If they don't like you in the United States, they'll take a lock like you're a padlock and they'll put it in a sock and
My
they'll
God.
beat you with a lock and a sock if they really don't like you. And so the Marines take the doors off the stalls and the bathrooms so the recruits don't even have a moment of privacy to reflect on what's being done to them. So you never have a moment to think by yourself. They'll always keep you moving. They'll always keep you, and so they're running dozens of different techniques on you in the military thing, and it's going to produce, again, it's going to produce cult members that are willing to go along. um
The Full Metal Jacket movie that you mentioned there is the perfect example for this atrocity.
yeah,
The
yeah,
pressure. Yeah.
that is the blanket party. and
Hmm.
and they even pulled the punch, and they showed the soap bar in the towel instead of the padlock in the sock. But it's, like they actually kind of pulled the punch. Some of the other ones that I break down in the book, and I don't know if y'all do this in Israel, but in the United States, they manipulatively weave the flag into the burial ceremony of the deceased so that the relative associates their beloved deceased with the flag, even though it's the policy of the church leadership that might have been responsible for their death. It's a way of, tricking the population into the flag. We talked earlier about the paid for flag worship woven into the stadium sports and events. If you saw the Super Bowl last year's Super Bowl, I think people are wising up to the flag ceremony and the, kind of Nazi-esque, thing of the flag ceremony. So they just had Kendrick Lamar's backup dancers, in red, white, and blue, and they just made the flag in the middle of the Super Bowl. And then Mustard, the other rapper in the Super Bowl halftime shirt, he had these prominent American flags on his thing, and so that's, product placement. We talked about we talked about them, weaving the flag into the movies, but also they're making the government the hero in the movies. So the government, whether the government, it's the president of the United States flying fighter jets in Independence Day to save the country from invading aliens, or whether it's Top Gun Maverick, or whether it's FBI agents Mulder and Scully, or whether it's the Marshals, like we have shows that, like, we've got movies that make the TSA the hero, where the TSA guy is saved, like, constantly. The American CIA is saving the country from like, there would be nuclear weapons like cooking off in every city on the planet if it wasn't for the CIA saving the day at the last minute to protect the population from these arch terrorists. And one thing that I think is interesting. So one of the things that we do is I back up the book with a flash drive that we call the Liberator. And in this flash drive, I have a documentary called Planet of the Arabs. Have you ever heard of this, Harry?
No.
So
I didn't.
in this documentary, Planet of the Arabs, since the dawn of movies, there have been at the time that this documentary was made, and it's probably 10 years old. It's probably over a decade now, maybe even over 15 years old. But back then, there had been around 1,000 movies that had Arab characters in the movies. And out of those 1,000 movies, okay, uh, I think it was 30 where the Arab characters were portrayed positively. There
Mm-hmm.
was about 30 or so where the Arab characters were portrayed neutrally. And there was 900 plus where the Arab characters were terrorists or scum or bad or raping people or whatever. And so just think about that.
Yeah.
900 to 30 negative to positive. And I've always assumed it's because the Arabs don't have usury and don't have they don't loan money at interest, and they have an Islamic banking system that goes against the banking system that is ripping off the Israeli and American people and and the rest of the world and everything like that. But we back up everything in the book with this flash drive that makes all of this information uncensorable on the internet. So we talked about them making them the heroes. This documentary, Theaters of War, really breaks down what I was telling you about Hollywood controlling 1,000 plus movies, 1,000 television shows. It's a great documentary. Everything
Mm-hmm.
in this is my second book, To See the Cages, to leave it. You can scan it and or screen pop it, and you can watch the documentary in the book. Scan it if you're reading the printed book. If you're reading the
Yeah.
EPUB, you click on it. Um, we use subliminal programming. And so this is an example of where the government put pro-government subliminal messages hidden into a television sign-off from the 1960s. And you may have some younger people watching. And so for you young folks, in the old days, you did not have television 24/7, 365, and the television used to go off at about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And right
Mm-hmm.
before the television went off, they would have what's called a sign off message, and it would inevitably be government propaganda. And what they did is, if you click through to this video right here, they were putting subliminal text: trust the US government, God is real, God is watching, believe in government God,
Wow.
rebellion will not be tolerated, worship, consume, do not question government. So they're running these unethically manipulative things, even to the point of putting messages into the video that scroll across, fast enough so that you can't really tell them, but your brain registers it because your brain catches everything, but not enough for you to notice. We talked about anchoring the moment, the flag to moments of high positive emotion. We talked about, this is the video I showed a little bit ago, where there's 469 product placements of the American flag and just 12 Michael Bay movies where little things going ding ding. We talked about secretly product placing the flag dozens of times, through the movie. I don't know if y'all do this in the United States, in Israel, but we'll weave the American flag into sexually appealing advertising, and then we'll do like little tricks like this, where we'll have so it's like it's again, it's called product placement, or it's called, sorry, anchoring. And so everybody likes to look at a beautiful woman, and so you're now subconsciously associating the flag with a beautiful woman, and then GQ magazine threw this like little subliminal text in: God, this is a great country. And so they're like little, like it's a gazillion little tricks that many people don't realize are going on until they actually see it. Here's another example.
What? It's an actually Halo?
Oh
They.
yeah. Oh yeah. Dozens. There's dozens of these. I have in the book Government: The Biggest Scam in History. I have almost 3 dozen examples of this, and I could have done more. I just ran out. I did one page like this and one page on the back. I could have done 4 dozen, 5 dozen. I could have done a gazillion of them, but they're putting the presidents in front of religious symbolism. They're putting, they're giving they're doing trick photography to give the rulers halos. And most people, they don't notice it because these come by one at a time. But if and the brain doesn't register it if they see it one at a time. But, one of the things I'm doing with the books is that, I'm revealing the pattern. And human beings are really good pattern recognitions. And if I show you 36 examples of this, all of a sudden your brain goes, hey, wait a minute. I never noticed that. I never noticed that they were doing that. They're doing that on purpose. They're running game on me, and nobody likes to be tricked. Nobody likes to be fooled. And then people are like out. Here's another one. So in the NBA, they put the American flag on the backboard so that you subconsciously associate the exhilaration of the goal with the flag. And they put the flag on the helmets where the NFL players are forbidden to remove them. So you subconsciously associate the goal with the flag. We talked about evolutionary leadership theory, where most people have this biological desire for a leader or a father figure. And so they give you the fake Hobson's choice. And again, classic cult behavior, classic cult behavior. Now, this is interesting. So, I mentioned this before, and so, it's fake. And so I'm going to, blow this up a little bit, but like in the United States, they pretend it's like a wrestling match where they pretend to fight, but they're both 100% they're both 100% aligned on everything that's really important to the bankers and the rulers behind the scenes. So Biden and Trump were 100% aligned on the COVID. They were 100% aligned on forcing unnecessary vaccines on you. They're 100% aligned on taxing you and confiscatory taxation. They're 100% aligned on NSA, CIA, Unit 8200 surveillance. They're 100% aligned on crony capitalism. They're 100% aligned on private prisons for victimless crimes. They're 100% aligned on regulatory capture. They're 100% aligned on no-bid contracts to the friends. They're 100% aligned on trillions. So I don't know if you know this, but in the United States, we're missing trillions of dollars from the defense budget.
Yeah, the black budget. And in 9/11, very conveniently, the area of the Pentagon, which was responsible for the black budget, was attacked, right, by a missile.
That's correct. That's where the people died. It was the one area of the Pentagon that had been just reinforced for blast damage, and that's where they had the auditors that were looking into, at that time, $2.3 trillion of expenses that could not be accounted for. And so there was a lot of things that were accomplished in the scam of 9/11, and one of those things was getting rid of the auditors that were looking into the missing $2.3 trillion out of the Pentagon's budget. They're both aligned on fractional reserve banking. They're both aligned on handing trillions of dollars to private banks through the bailouts and the COVID bailouts. They're 100% aligned on AMA. So they pretend to be different, but really they're really exact same on all of these, like, really, really important things. And so one of the other tricks they do is if you say the pledge, they get ice cream stores to give kids sugar, which is a drug. It produces a sensory pleasure in the brain if you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And that program is actually run by a Hollywood propagandist by the name of Stratton Leopold, who makes movies that glorify the CIA and the government and everything like that. And so there's all these different, like, I've got 25 techniques in the book, paying the population to pledge their support to the shady Constitution. And so in the 2024 election, Pentagon, intelligence agency, and NASA contractor Elon Musk, who has received over $19 billion in government contracts and $5 billion in tax credits, was running this scam to, make people, support the shady Constitution, which we've already discussed. And so, I talked about it again, but like, as an adult, if you step back and really look at the legitimacy of the Constitution. Here's a little meme I've got sign right there where it says we give ourselves the power to make up rules and take the wealth of others.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous. It's like
Yeah.
it's a dumb idea. But if you're giving out millions of dollars and you're running these games on the population, you can get people to go along with something even as dumb as like this idea. Um, I don't know if this is going on in Israel, but in the United States, in our social media, in Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, YouTube, they're suggesting government status propaganda. And so this is a guy that did an emotional performance of the national anthem, but they're putting that in, they're putting this statist propaganda into your social media feed, and they're in like LinkedIn and Facebook and these others, they're promoting the politicians and the controlled opposition voices. They're saying, hey, you can follow Joe Biden and see their updates, and you can follow. And so they're controlling the information that the population receives at the same time that they're suppressing and shadow banning and demonetizing authentic voices like mine, so that you never ever hear the alternative case for like what's really going on. um are also they're using a variety of techniques. One of the techniques, and a lot of people don't know this, but human beings, in addition to being predisposed to have a leader, are also predisposed to look at celebrities. And
Mhm.
so they did a study. Duke University took a bunch of monkeys, male monkeys. They put them in front of television sets, and they would have different images go past the screen. And as long as while the monkeys were drinking juicy juice out of like a hamster bottle, so as long as they're drinking the juicy juice,
Mhm.
the images keep going by, but at any moment they can freeze the image on the screen by not drinking the juicy juice. So essentially, they're paying to see certain images, and they found out that the monkeys would pay to see two different kinds of images. And number one's obvious; they're male monkeys, so they would pay to see rear female monkey hindquarters. But even more fascinating is that they would pay to see pictures of higher status monkeys. And so the
Mhm.
monkeys live in a troop. The troop might have 20 monkeys in it. There's a defined pecking order. If you're, through beat down, the other males in the tribe. If you're monkey number 3, you'll pay to see pictures of monkey 2 and 1, but you won't pay to see pictures of 4 through 20. If you're monkey number 7, you'll pay to see pictures of 1 through 6, but you won't pay to see pictures of the ones under you.
Yeah.
And so they realize that human beings and monkeys have this behavioral psychology where they're predisposed to pay attention to higher status monkeys. It's a little bit of it's a safety thing. Or am I going along with what the important members of the tribe are doing? It's leveraging the tribal nature and things like that. And so you can get people to pay attention. And so Elon Musk and Trump's Truth social media platform, they're giving them the ability to steer attention by leveraging this knowledge of human psychology, knowledge of human behavior. We talked about they
Wow.
take the kids to Mecca in middle school, where the capital of the United States looks like the Vatican in Rome. They take them to see the temples and the monuments. This is the Jefferson Memorial. This is an actual Greek temple, a replica of a Greek temple in Nashville, right here, Parthenon. The statues are the same. The outside is the same. We're taking
Mm.
kids
And the
to watch.
fascist symbol that you have in your Congress. Yeah.
Yes, the fasci.
Mhm.
And so the word fascism comes from the Roman fasci. It's the axe blade wrapped in a bundle of wooden rods bound together by red leather. And the symbolism is a single stick is easily broken, but together they are extremely strong. And
Mhm.
so it's tricking the population into collectivism versus individualism. We're going to give the population a narrative that if they don't go along with what the artificial tribe is doing, and when I say artificial tribe, um, the United States is a big place. It's a huge place, and it's a giant artificial tribe. That at the end of the day, if you've ever been to the United States, the people that live in the upper northeast and Maine don't have a lot in common with people that live in the deserts of the American Southwest. The people that live in Portlandia on the Pacific coast don't have a lot of in common with the people that live in Texas. The people that live in Alaska don't have anything in common with the people that live in Hawaii. People in Hawaii don't have a lot in common with people that live in Oklahoma in the Dust Bowl. There's just it's a giant. So they're going to create an artificial tribe, and then they're going to use these techniques to get you to identify with the tribe so that you go along with what you think the tribe is doing, and then they're going to control the information that you receive using the monopoly media and this algorithmic censorship to get you to go along with the tribal behavior. They're going to make anarchy, voluntarism, the idea that you don't need government, they're going to make it look dirty and nasty, and they're going to make it look like chaos, and they're going to use the media to make it look like it's chaos and dystopia. And I
Yeah,
actually,
they are weaponizing it.
they're
So it's
weaponizing. Well, it's a trick. They're literally tricking you into a worldview that they created out of whole cloth. And in my other book, in Government, the Biggest Scam in History, I actually break down how they took over the dictionary, and they created in the dictionary, they took over, they bought the dictionary, the Safra banking family, and they changed the definition over time from no rulers to chaos and dystopia. And then I show you what the Webster's dictionary looked like from 1828, the definition of anarchy, and then I compare it with the current version from Webster's dictionary. And then I explain the Safra banking family bought Encyclopedia Britannica and the dictionary, and they installed Leslie Gelb, the president emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, to sit on the editorial board of advisors. And you just like now you understand like how they're able to to do kind of the things that they do. So they're surreptitious. HBO had a docuseries called The Anarchist that made it look like anarchy was associated with disease, nasty, unkept, adulterous, unstable drunks with PTSD that flash satanic Baphomets, live in dumps with nasty toilets where they burn flags, say fuck the troops, live off their wives, hate Santa Claus, and are associated with the scam of Bitcoin, alleged to be a Ponzi scheme, which they get from ATMs they steal from strip clubs, to sum up one of the episodes. That's literally a summary of like the trick that HBO is tricking their audience by giving them an artificial reality. And I break it down because I used to go to this conference that this was shot in, and I knew all the participants, and I did a 7-part investigation where I break down all the tricks and all this. They were doing subliminal programming. They were putting subliminal text on the screen. They were running all these tricks, and I break it all down. You
bill of
know,
obligations.
oh yeah, the Bill of Obligations. So the other thing they'll do is they'll promote books, and they'll give them New York bestseller status, and they'll promote it in social media. They'll promote it on the political talk shows. They'll promote it with New York Times bestseller status. I think there's a companion documentary for this. They'll put out companion documentaries. They'll
But
give
it's a
them.
play on the Bill of Rights, obviously.
Right. It is a play on the
Mhm.
Bill of Rights, but you're obliged, if you don't support the government, you're a bad person. Only bad people don't support the artificially indoctrinated statist religion of statism, and you're a bad person. And so they're going to take that book and they're going to promote it in the same way. They're going to put it into your social media feed. They're going to put it into your LinkedIn feed. They're going to put it into your, and so they're going to take that and they're going to run it through society. Walmart is promoting hundreds and hundreds of statist books for kids and items of clothing and merchandise targeted towards children and red, white, and blue and 4th of July and everything like that. They
Etienne,
assert,
if I may, just 1 second, I want to use this opportunity that you spoke about the Bill of Rights to explain the audience that the Bill of Rights doesn't give any natural rights to any of the people alive. It's if you can explain that, please. I mean, when people are gathering in a room and writing the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, they don't actually produce any rights. We are born with those rights. Um, if you can explain a little. You're muted. I can't hear you. Yeah.
can you hear me now? I'm
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Okay, so you nailed it. You don't get rights from government. The word right, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you hear people say, I have a right to do this, or I have a right to do that, or I have the right to own a gun, or I have the right to do whatever, that word comes from the natural law tradition. And in the natural law tradition, which is the base of the golden rule, it's based in reality, it conforms to the natural world. It's an absolute aspect of nature, obvious as a self-evident truth. There's really 5 to 7 wrongs. And the reason that these things are obviously wrong is because there is a theft of some sort: assault, rape, theft, trespass, and coercion. And so assault is a theft of physical safety, physical well-being. Rape is the theft of sexual choice. Theft is theft of property. Trespass is theft in your own lair. Murder is theft of life. Okay, and these are obviously wrongs. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a victim, and so the word right, a right is an action that causes no harm or violation to anybody else. And so anything that's not a wrong is a right. So it's your right to do anything that you want as long as you're not harming anybody else.
The non-aggression principle that my audience should learn about.
Right. So
Mhm.
most voluntarists believe in something called the non-aggression principle, and that's an ethical and moral principle that asserts that aggression is inherently immoral and illegitimate, and aggression is designed as the initiation of physical force against persons or property, the threat of such or fraud upon persons or their property. It doesn't prohibit self-defense, so it's not pacifism. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but voluntarists and peaceful anarchists and people that have done a lot of thinking about morality and about natural law rights, uh, everything that I've said is logical and it's moral, and it doesn't require there to be a hierarchical government control. It doesn't require forcing anybody to do anything. I don't have to vote to impose my ruler over you. You don't have to vote to impose your ruler over me. And obviously rigged elections where the media's making the whole thing seem legitimate. All of it is moral. It's all logical. There's it makes sense, versus the statism is illogical, and it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't it just doesn't
It's based in violence. It's the
it's
opposite of the non-aggression principle
it is
by
it is
definition.
it is by definition, it is based in violence. And so that is that's really the message, is that you don't really need government. Everything the government does would be done better, faster, cheaper. Everybody would be much wealthier without government. There'd be more prosperity. There would be a lot less uh, uh, disharmony in our populations if there wasn't government. What I mean by that is we're constantly fighting here in the United States. The Democrats are fighting against the Republicans, especially at the school board level, because anybody that wins the school board, like if you lose the school board, you may get critical race theory forced on your kids, or you may get LGBTQ studies forced on your kids, or you may get sex education or death education, or you may get in Michigan. And in Minneapolis, you may get Islam forced on your kids. And because if the Islamists are battling to take over the school boards as well, and so there's a winner take all that has society, fighting with everybody. But if we didn't have government, and the government wasn't stealing half of everybody's money in overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation, and they weren't stealing the value out of the money, and they weren't stealing your money for an education that you don't want, and then everybody would be able to afford the education that they want for their kids. Some people may want, nobody would get Prussian model. Most people would get Montessori or Waldorf or self-directed education or
Homeschooling. Keep
homeschooling or
keep
whatever.
your children away from this vicious government. I mean, what kind of a sane parent is going to send his own children to the hands of the enemy?
Only a fool lets his enemy, educate his kids. And in the United States, and I break it down in the book, and in the United States, people are pulling their kids out of these governments, out of these government schools at an amazing rate. This is the growth of homeschooling in the United States. It's over 3.5 million kids a year now, and it's just going through the roof. And so people are figuring out the government's running game on them. They're figuring out that that the government schools are using these unethically manipulative techniques on their kids, and they're pulling their kids out of the government system because the government schools are really just horrible. I mean, they're police state. They've got these metal detectors. They've got it's really bad. And so anyway, I break it down, and I do these very image rich books, and I help people understand the system, like how the government is running game on them. And it's kind of interesting. So people really resonate with it.
Mhm.
And the majority of our, or sorry, not the majority, but 10% of the books that we sell are sold as what we call friends bundles. And so people are buying the books, they're realizing how important they are, and they're coming back and they're buying them in fives and their tens, and they're giving them to their friends and their family and their relatives. They put them into donate them to libraries. We have these like little mini libraries in neighborhoods. I don't know if y'all have that in Israel, where people will send me photos of them putting copies of the books in these little mini neighborhood libraries that we have. People will use them as make them books in Airbnbs. Like if they run an Airbnb, they'll make it the coffee table book in their Airbnb. They'll leave them in Ubers. And so over 10, we're like, it's very rare to have a book that people are buying in bulk, but over 10% of the books that people are buying, they're buying them for their friends, their family, their colleagues. We just had somebody here in the United States that bought 258 copies of To See the Cages, to Leave It, and is distributing that in Western North Carolina. They started out with 41 copies to their local sheriff's department. And
The
so,
sheriff. Wow. Okay.
yeah, so people are going on the offensive, and giving these books to the government employees and saying, hey, understand how you've been tricked. Understand that the government is running game on you. Understand that the government is using unethically manipulative techniques so that you'll use violence on peaceful people, shoot your own karma, have to deal with the Lord, and have to explain yourself to the Lord why you hurt people, why you caused harm in the world, why you hurt other people. And so, like uh, you know, um, I'm, I'm glad to see people doing that, and I feel humbled by it that people are using this to, to help other people understand the scam of government.
Yeah. Before we finish, just one last question, which is important for me, because here in Israel, we have about 1 million people who are connected to the teats of the state. They
Yeah.
are working for the government. And they think that they are actually providing us with some kind of incredible service. And they don't understand that they are actually receiving money which is stolen from us. And they are not even really paying taxes because all of the money that they receive is taken by a point of a gun to our head against our will, and that's the worst kind of service we can possibly ask for. So can you explain to them how brutal and immoral it is to work for the government and to enjoy this money?
Yes. So one of the tricks that the government uses is to get everybody dependent on the government. And so the government wants as many people as humanly possible completely dependent on welfare, dependent on their retirement, dependent on their paycheck, completely dependent, because it's hard to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. And people are going to go like retirees that are dependent on Social Security. They're gonna go and they're gonna vote. They're gonna legitimize the system. They've got to beg and plead and everything for their to get their government money, and to make sure that they're always worried about the government taking away their money or reducing their money and devaluing their money. And the government here in the United States is robbing them of the purchasing power, and they lie to them about what the inflation rate is, so they don't have to pay cost of living adjustments for the money. And it's horrible. But the point that you made is that the government employees that go along with this, one of the things that they don't understand is that the judges and the cops and the military and the government employees, they're not paying taxes. Okay, while you're forced to pay the government taxes, they're not really paying taxes, because taxes is the money that is stolen from people that produce goods and services for the world. Okay, that creates a pool of money called the taxes. So those are the taxes. Government employees don't pay into that pool. They just receive the tax money stolen from others. Now, what the government does is they pretend that they're going to take some of that money out of the government employee's check, but he's not really paying taxes. He's just receiving less taxes. So government employees aren't taxpayers, they're tax receivers that just receive less taxes. And that's a stone cold truth that the government employees don't like to really hear. And like, it really, I hate to be the one. I honestly, it's a very hard job that I have to be the one to kind of explain this to people, that they've been tricked, that they've devoted their life to lie, they're robbing their friends and their family and their neighbors. And it causes strife in my life, and I don't like to do it, but somebody's got to do it, because it's so destructive. And it's the cause of war. It's the cause of these manufactured wars, and these manufactured, wars manufactured sell weapons, and the strife and the stealing and the inflation and the economic warfare against the people, and the mandatory vaccines and the COVID and the lockdowns and the riots in Minneapolis. All of this is government running these games on the people to divide and conquer them. And so I'm trying to expose it. My organization is called the Art of Liberty Foundation, and we're a startup public policy organization that looks at socioeconomic problems from a principled, voluntarist standpoint of, number one, the government is illegitimate. It's impossible to have a legitimate government. And number two, that the government, especially in the United States, and I know for a fact in Israel too, is being run as a criminal enterprise.
Yeah.
And so it is like there is trillions of dollars in the United States. I'm sure billions and billions of dollars going out the back door in Israel to identifiable people and organizations, and no bid contracts and military defense spending that you don't need to fight wars that are being engineered with manufactured enemies like Hamas and things like that. And so we're both under the same system. And as my book points out, they're all running the same playbook. And so I'm sure that, your audience could not help but notice that the Israeli government is running the exact same techniques that the Nazi government, the Soviet Union government, the East German government, the worst governments in all of history are running. All right, the Israeli government is running the exact same playbook that the Nazis ran on their people, because it works. These are ancient techniques. The original Etienne de la Boetie, who I took my pen name from, You know, he wrote about this in the 15th century. Some of the techniques he described in the 1500s are still being used today because they work. Because you know, and so what I try and do at the Art of Liberty Foundation, what we try and do is, you know, you can only be fooled by the magician until the population understands how the magician does the trick, and then the trick loses all the power. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show people how the magician does the trick so that they can't be fooled, so that they're not tricked and they're not chumped and they're not fooled.
Yes. Actually, as crazy as it may sound, government doesn't even really exist. It's just a terrible, vicious idea in the minds
Yeah,
of people. People exist, the building exists, the ritual and the participation in this insanity exist, but the government is a delusion, a crazy superstitious.
it is.
So,
It's the most dangerous superstition, and it's a completely
Larkin, yeah.
indoctrinated. It's a completely indoctrinated belief system. So
Mhm.
nobody's ever born thinking that you ought to have a ruling class and that you ought to be pledging your allegiance and you ought to, like it's 100% they're putting you into a mandatory government school, or if you like in the United States you can go to a private school, but all the private schools have to teach the exact same thing with respect to government, or you don't get accredited. You don't get your accreditation, so that you can't be a school if you don't teach what the government does. And so even if you go to a private school, they have to teach the exact same thing. And it's 100% artificially indoctrinated belief system by the people that are stealing half your money in overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation, brought to you by the bankers at the top of the system that create dollars out of thin air using fractional reserve banking. And they bought up the media and the social media and the search engines and the AI, so that those systems are not going to tell you that the whole thing is illegitimate. You've got to think about it for yourself. You got to step back and you got to analyze what you were told as a child about the legitimacy of government, the necessity of government, the desirability of government, and say, do I really believe that? Is it really true? Can you have a government? If there were 10 people on an island, could 6 people through a constitution or a vote or whatever actually get the ability to rule and control the other 4? Or is that whole idea immoral and dumb and just something that they slipped to me when I was a child?
So basically, the final thing is that the solution is to understand all that you taught us, because the battlefield is the war between our ears. And as soon as we understand all that you imparted to us, that's the end of it. That's the end of the government and the belief in authority, the false belief in authority.
Yeah, so the final thing, and then I got to hop. But the good
Yes.
news message of my work and what we do at the Art of Liberty Foundation is we call it the one-way revolution. So once people realize, you know, that the government's illegitimate, you can't have a legitimate government, and that the government is running game on them, a kind of pimp game. And a pimp is somebody that runs unethically manipulative tricks on women to get them to turn over some of their money to him. Okay. And so the government is running unethically manipulative techniques on the population to get them to semi willingly turn over some of their money. So it's kind of a pimp game. When you realize the government's running pimp game on you, most people, they're out. They're like, I didn't know that was going on, but now that I know that's going on, I'm not supporting that anymore. I'm not participating in that anymore. I'm not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm taking my flag down. They had me. And I'm no different. They had me hook, line, and sinker. I was a Cub Scout. I was a Boy Scout. I was going to go into the U.S. military. I went down to a recruiting station and I took the AVSBAD test to get into the military and everything. And they had me hook, line, and sinker until somebody explained it to me. And once somebody explained it to me and I understood it and learned about it and everything, then I'm out and I'm providing that service to other people. And
Like
that's
the
what,
name of your book. Once you see it, you can't unsee it anymore. Eh,
yes, to see the
Yeah.
cage is literally to leave it. And then
Mhm.
the other book is Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed. And then I mentioned we back everything up and we make it uncensorable, because one of the things the government's doing is that they're making things disappear off of the internet. And so we back everything up, all the evidence of government illegitimacy and criminality, everything, all the scholarship, all the videos that I showed you. So in case they disappear off the internet, you just take that and you slide it into any USB drive. And now you can browse it, you can keyword search it, you can get all of the videos and documentaries and books that the government's making disappear, and you can make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And once you have one of these, you can make copies for your friends. So we even have these labels where you can buy these for like $3 a pop on eBay, and you can make unlimited copies of all of the books, everything for your friends, your family. It's a way of decentralizing resistance. It's a way of making it easy to resist the organized crime government. And that's kind of what we do. We make it easy for people. We make it easy for people to understand, and then we make it easy for people to resist.
Incredible work. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Just remind my audience about your homepage and your Substack, and so they will know how to follow and support you.
You can find most of my writings for free at artofliberty.substack.com. You can find the Art of Liberty Foundation at artofliberty.org. You can get the book Government, the Biggest Scam in History, and see all of the amazing reviews at government-scam.com. And you can get the brand new book at seethecage.com.
Amazing. For me, you are the real hero and not the people on the battlefield. This is the real battlefield. And thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah, Harry, you too, man. It's like, thank you for what you're doing. This is how we're going to win. And thank you for doing what you're doing in Israel. I'm trying to find somebody to translate to See the Cage is to leave it into Hebrew. So if any of your audience wants, please reach out to me. We've got a thing that makes it very easy for you to translate. We've got translations coming up in Latin American Spanish, Castilian Spanish, German, Greek, French, but we'd love to have Hebrew. So please, if any of your audience would like to help us with that, please reach out to me.
Of course. So thank you very much. And with your permission, I will end this fantastic recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.